I still remember that day like it was yesterday. The day I almost lost my daughter. Because of the people who were supposed to be her new family. The family of my son-in-law pushed my daughter into the lake. And they didn't know I saw everything. Tell me honestly, if you were me, what would you have done? Would you have kept quiet and let karma take its course? Or would you have done what I did? Because I still think about that moment every single day, and sometimes I wonder if I went too far or not far enough. My daughter, Emily, had always been my pride and joy. She was one of those gentle souls who could find good in anyone. Ever since she was little, she was the peacemaker, the one who believed that everyone deserved a second chance. When she met Michael, her now husband, I'll admit, I was skeptical. Not because he wasn't charming or polite. Oh, he was. Too polite, actually. There was something about his smile that didn't reach his eyes. But Emily was smitten, and as any mother knows, when your daughter looks at someone like that, you want to believe she's found happiness. They dated for about 2 years before getting engaged. Michael's family seemed different. His mother, Linda, had this air of superiority about her, always looking people up and down like she was measuring their worth. His father, George, was quieter, but you could tell he ruled the house. And then there was his sister Claire. Spoiled, entitled, and mean in that subtle, manipulative way that leaves you doubting yourself. I met them a few times during the engagement, and every time I left their home, I had this uneasy feeling in my stomach. But Emily kept saying, "Mom, they're just traditional. They mean well." The wedding was beautiful, at least on the surface. A lakefront ceremony, all soft sunlight and white roses. Everyone smiling for photos, everyone pretending to be happy. But behind those smiles, I noticed things. Linda whispering sharply to Michael when Emily wasn't looking. Claire rolling her eyes every time Emily's friends made a toast. George standing stiffly during the father-daughter dance, like he couldn't wait for it to be over. Still, I told myself it was just wedding stress. I didn't want to dampen my daughter's special day. After they married, Emily moved into Michael's family's property. A big old house near the lake, just outside of town. It wasn't ideal, but Michael convinced her it made sense financially. "We'll save money for a house of our own," he said, "just for a year or two." But that year or two started stretching longer and longer, and soon I started hearing less and less from Emily. At first, it was just missed calls, then short texts, then weeks would go by before I'd hear her voice. When I asked, she always had an excuse: busy with work, bad cell reception, just tired. But I could tell something was off. One Sunday, I decided to drive out there unannounced. It was about an hour away. I brought her favorite pie, hoping it'd be a pleasant surprise. But when I arrived, I saw something that made my heart sink. Emily opened the door, and she looked smaller somehow. Thinner, her eyes had dark circles under them. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes anymore. When I hugged her, she flinched slightly like she wasn't used to being touched warmly. I tried to act casual, to not scare her off, but I couldn't stop noticing the tension in that house. Linda's fake smile, Claire's glare, and Michael's voice that always seemed to hold a warning edge when he spoke to Emily. Over the next few months, the pattern continued. Emily kept insisting everything was fine, but I knew it wasn't. I could feel it in my bones, the way mothers do. One night, she called me quietly, her voice trembling. "Mom," she whispered, "if something ever happens to me, promise me you'll look after Daisy." Daisy was her golden retriever, her baby before she ever had kids. I froze. "Emily, what are you talking about?" I asked, but she just said, "It's nothing. I'm being dramatic." And then she hung up. A week later, I got a call from Michael. He sounded distraught, saying there'd been an accident. They'd gone for a family picnic by the lake, and Emily had slipped and fallen into the water. They tried to save her, he said, but by the time they pulled her out, she wasn't breathing. My whole world shattered. I dropped the phone and screamed. My daughter, my baby, was gone. But something didn't add up. Emily was an excellent swimmer. She grew up by that same lake. She'd never just slip. I felt it deep down. This wasn't an accident. The police called it a tragic drowning. No evidence of foul play. Closed the case in 2 days. But I couldn't rest. I couldn't sleep. I replayed every conversation, every uneasy feeling. And then, a few days after the funeral, I got a message on Facebook from an anonymous account. Just one line. Check the camera by the boat house. I didn't even think twice. I drove straight to the lake. The property was still accessible, though empty. My hands shook as I found the security camera the message mentioned. Half, hidden behind a post near the boathouse. I didn't know if it even worked, but something in me pushed forward. I managed to pull the memory card, and with trembling hands I took it home. When I finally got it to play on my laptop, what I saw made my blood run cold. The footage showed that day by the lake. I could see them all. Michael, his parents, his sister, and Emily. They were setting up for what looked like a picnic. Emily was laughing nervously, her smile uncertain. Then, there was some kind of argument. You couldn't hear the words, but the body language said everything. Linda stood with her arms crossed, her face hard. Michael pointed toward the lake, shouting something. Emily shook her head, backing away. Then Claire stepped behind her, slowly, deliberately, and shoved her into the water. I gasped so loud I scared myself. The camera shook slightly as if from the impact of the splash. Emily flailed, tried to grab the edge, but Michael didn't move. None of them did. They just stood there watching as she struggled, her arms splashing weakly. And then nothing. She disappeared under the water. My heart stopped. They didn't even try to help her. Not one of them. I can't describe the rage I felt in that moment. It wasn't human. It was something darker, deeper. They murdered my daughter. And they thought they'd gotten away with it. I didn't call the police right away. I wanted to. But I also knew they'd say it was circumstantial. No sound, no clear intent. I'd seen how the system worked. I needed more. So, I decided to pretend. I played the grieving, forgiving mother-in-law. I told Michael I wanted to keep in touch, to stay close to family. He bought it. They all did. And that's when I started planning. Before I tell you what I did next, let me ask you this. What would you have done in my place? If you found out your only child was murdered by the very people who claim to love her, would you let the law handle it? Or would you take matters into your own hands? Think about it for a second. Comment below what you'd do, because what I did next, even I didn't think I was capable of it. I started small. I knew confrontation wouldn't get me anywhere. They'd deny it, twist it. So I pretended to forgive. I'd call Michael, ask how he was holding up, even invite him to dinner. He'd come, putting on that fake grief mask. And I'd watch him every twitch, every smirk when he thought I wasn't looking. I planted seeds. You know, Michael? I'd say softly, Emily's death doesn't sit right with me. But I trust you. And he'd nod, a flicker of guilt, or fear, crossing his eyes. Then I reached out to Claire, pretending I wanted closure. I asked to meet her at the lake, where it happened. She was hesitant but agreed. We stood by the water, the same spot where Emily had fallen. I looked at her and said quietly, "It's peaceful here, isn't it?" She nodded. Then I said, "Funny thing about peaceful places. They remember what happened in them." She frowned. "What do you mean?" And I said, "I saw what you did, Claire." The color drained from her face. She tried to play dumb, stammered something about me being delusional. I smiled. "It's on video," I whispered. "You should have checked your cameras." She went pale. "You're bluffing," she said. "Am I?" I asked, tilting my head. "You tell me." She started shaking. Then she broke. She said it wasn't supposed to happen like that. That they only wanted to scare Emily. To teach her a lesson. Because she'd been talking about leaving Michael and taking money from their joint account. I felt sick. They planned it. All of them. And they thought drowning her would just be a scare. I walked away before I did something I couldn't undo. But I recorded every word. I went straight to the police with the footage and the recording. It took weeks. Weeks of interviews, statements, and legal back and forth. But finally, they couldn't ignore it. Michael, his parents, and Claire were all arrested. Charged with manslaughter and conspiracy. The trial was brutal. They tried to paint Emily as unstable, tried to claim she fell during an argument. But the video spoke louder than their lies. When the verdict came, guilty, I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Even now, years later, I visit that lake sometimes. I sit by the water and talk to Emily. I tell her about the little garden I planted in her name, about Daisy, who still curls up by her old bed. I tell her justice was served, even if it'll never bring her back. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret what I did, if I regret not confronting them sooner, or letting the police handle it from the start. The truth is, no parent should ever have to see what I saw. No one should ever feel that helpless rage. But I do know this: I kept my promise. I protected her, even when she wasn't here anymore. So tell me, was I wrong for what I did? For pretending to forgive them just to gather proof? For playing their game to bring them down? Because I'll never know if it makes me any better than them. But I know I'd do it again in a heartbeat. If you were on my side, like this video. Subscribe for more true stories like mine. And please, tell me in the comments what you think about all of this. I'll see you all in the next story.